The Young and the Restless spoilers. Here's a fully developed and immersive story based on the details you've provided. The narrative blends suspense, tension, and drama, capturing the stakes of the confrontation between Victor and Ian, while weaving in the other subplots. The War of Shadows, Victor versus Ian Ward. In the sprawling Newman estate, Victor Newman stood at his office window, staring out at the snow-covered grounds of Genoa City. His eyes were cold, calculating. Beneath his poised exterior was a storm of anger and determination. Jordan was gone, his family safe for now. But Victor knew better than to rest easy. Ian Ward, the man he considered the embodiment of pure evil, was still out there, lurking like a venomous snake waiting for its chance to strike. Victor wasn't a man to live in fear, but he was a realist. Ian wasn't an enemy who could be reasoned with, bought off, or even intimidated. He was patient, methodical, and ruthless. For months, Ian had been a shadow on the edge of Victor's life, silently observing, waiting for a crack in his armor. And Victor knew it was only a matter of time before Ian made his move. Ian Ward, the puppet master across town. Ian Ward crouched in the dim light of his hideout, a wicked smile curling on his lips. Victor Newman, his nemesis, was always so careful, so thorough in protecting his family. But even the great Victor Newman had weaknesses. And Ian was a master at exploiting weaknesses. The rumors that had begun to circulate in Genoa City were true, at least in part. Ian had been tracking Mariah's fractured family dynamic for weeks. He had seen the tension growing between her and Tessa, the fiery arguments that left both women drained and vulnerable. When Tessa left town with baby Aria after one particularly heated fight, Ian had been watching. Though the details were murky, he knew Tessa was on the move, and she might just be the key to drawing Victor out of his fortress of control. For now, Ian remained in the shadows, manipulating events from afar. He wasn't in a rush. He thrived on the slow build of tension, on making his prey feel the suffocating weight of his presence before striking. Victor Newman had taken everything from him before, and now it was Ian's turn to dismantle Victor's world piece by piece. The disappearance of Jordan. Meanwhile, Chance Chancellor wasn't one to let loose ends linger. Jordan's sudden disappearance had left a sour taste in his mouth. Though there was no hard evidence, Chance's instincts screamed that Victor Newman was involved. Jordan had been trouble, a wild card, and her presence in Genoa City had posed a risk to the Newman family. But now, she was gone without a trace, and Chance couldn't ignore the timing. Standing outside Victor's office one evening, Chance clenched his fists, frustration simmering beneath his calm demeanor. He wanted to confront Victor directly, but he knew better. The Newman patriarch was untouchable in ways that went beyond his wealth and power. Victor always had an alibi, always had layers of protection to shield him from scrutiny. But Chance wasn't giving up. If Victor thought he could eliminate threats in the shadows without consequence, he was sorely mistaken. Chance had started to dig, quietly tracking both Victor and Ian Ward. He didn't trust either man, and he was determined to uncover the truth, even if it put him in the crossfire of their dangerous game. The shadow of doubt. Back at the Abbott house, Mariah paced the floor, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She had been trying to reach Tessa for hours, but every call went straight to voicemail. The last time they had spoken, their argument had ended in tears, with Tessa leaving the house with Aria in tow. Now, Mariah was starting to panic. She didn't want to believe the whispers about Ian Ward's involvement, but the thought of her wife and daughter in danger sent a chill down her spine. When she finally reached Sharon, her mother's calm voice was a small comfort. "Mariah, you need to stay focused," Sharon said. "If Ian is involved, you can't let fear cloud your judgment. We'll find Tessa and Aria. But you need to stay strong." Mariah nodded, though she knew her mother couldn't see her. "I just don't understand why Tessa would leave without telling me where she was going. She knows how dangerous things are right now." "We'll figure this out," Sharon reassured her. "But for now, stay vigilant. The battle begins." Victor's patience was wearing thin. Despite his best efforts, Ian continued to elude him, taunting him with subtle moves that kept Victor guessing. When Victor received an anonymous tip that Ian was planning to strike soon, he didn't hesitate. He had his men prepare for anything, every security measure was tightened, every contingency planned. But Ian was always one step ahead. On a cold, dark night, Victor received a message that chilled him to the bone. It was a single photo, Tessa, holding Arya, her face pale with fear. The message below was simple, come alone, or they die. Victor knew it was a trap, but he had no choice. He couldn't allow innocent lives, especially the life of a child connected to his family, to be collateral damage. Armed and ready, he headed to the location Ian had specified, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Genoa City. The showdown inside the warehouse, the air was thick with tension. Victor stood tall, his presence commanding even in the face of danger. Across from him, Ian Ward emerged from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with malice. You've come, Victor, Ian said, his voice dripping with mockery. Always the hero. Let them go, Ian, Victor demanded, his voice cold and unyielding. This fight is between you and me. Ian chuckled, stepping closer. Oh, but it's so much more than that. You've taken everything from me, Victor. Now, I'm going to take everything from you. What Ian didn't anticipate was Victor's ace in the hole. From the shadows, Chance emerged, his weapon drawn. Drop the act, Ian, Chance barked. This ends here. Ian's expression darkened. You think you can stop me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. As the standoff escalated, chaos erupted. A shot rang out, the echo reverberating through the warehouse. Ian lunged for Victor, but the older man was ready, countering with a force that belied his age. Chance moved to secure Tessa and Arya, shielding them from the fray. The battle between Victor and Ian was brutal, a culmination of years of hatred and animosity. But in the end, Victor's resilience won out. Ian was subdued, his plans thwarted, for now. Aftermath in the days that followed, Genoa City began to settle back into a semblance of normalcy. Tessa and Arya were safe, though Mariah knew the scars of the ordeal would take time to heal. Victor, ever the patriarch, returned to his family, knowing the fight wasn't over. Ian Ward might have been defeated, but shadows always lingered in Genoa City. Chance, though frustrated by the lack of concrete evidence against Victor, couldn't deny the man's resolve to protect his family. As much as he hated Victor's methods, he respected the man's strength. And so, the game of shadows continued, a never-ending dance of power, loyalty, and survival. The weight of justice, Chance's dilemma. The warehouse was eerily silent now, save for the faint rustling of wind slipping through cracks in the old walls. Ian Ward's lifeless body lay sprawled on the cold floor, blood pooling beneath him. Victor Newman stood over the corpse, his gun still smoking, his face carved from stone. There wasn't a flicker of regret in his eyes, only the calm resolve of a man who had done what needed to be done. In the shadows, Chance Chancellor stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had seen everything, the fight, the shot, the grim determination with which Victor ended Ian Ward's reign of terror. He hadn't intervened, hadn't shouted, hadn't moved. And now, as Victor calmly dragged Ian's body toward the back door of the warehouse, Chance was confronted with a question that threatened to shatter him. What kind of man am I if I let this go? Victor's cold resolve. Victor Newman, the Titan of Genoa City, wasn't a man easily shaken. He had faced men like Ian Ward before, monsters who thrived on fear and chaos, and he had learned long ago that sometimes justice required a firmer hand. As he dragged Ian's lifeless body into the dense woods behind the Newman estate, he thought of his family, Nicky, Nick, Victoria, Abby. They were safe now. When he reached a secluded clearing, Victor began to dig. The earth was cold and unyielding, but he didn't stop, didn't hesitate. Every shovel full of dirt was a declaration of victory, a promise that Ian Ward's dark shadow would never threaten his family again. When the grave was finally complete, Victor stood over it for a moment, his chest rising and falling with the effort of his labor. You were a pest, Ian, he muttered under his breath, tossing the last clump of dirt onto the grave. And pests don't deserve mercy. Chance's inner turmoil. From his vantage point, Chance watched everything. He had followed Victor from the warehouse, his instincts pulling him along even as his mind screamed for him to stop. Now, standing at the edge of the woods, he saw the unthinkable. Victor Newman, a man revered and feared in equal measure, burying the body of Ian Ward with the same composure he might use to sign a business deal. Chance's badge felt heavier than ever, pressing against his chest like a brand. He was an officer of the law, sworn to uphold justice. But what was justice in this moment? Ian Ward was a monster, a man who had tormented Genoa City, who had threatened innocent lives without remorse. His death meant freedom and peace for so many. Yet, the way it had happened, execution style, cold and deliberate, gnawed at Chance's conscience. He clenched his fists, the conflict within him threatening to consume him. If he arrested Victor, it would spark chaos. The Newman family would rally around their patriarch, the press would have a field day, and Genoa City would be thrown into turmoil. And for what? To punish a man who had rid the world of a predator? But if Chance let this go, what did that make him? A coward? A hypocrite? A man willing to compromise his principles when the stakes were too high? The silent witness Victor finished his work and returned to the house, his expression unreadable. Chance didn't reveal himself, didn't confront him. Instead, he stood in the shadows, watching as Victor disappeared into the warm glow of the Newman estate. The darkness around him seemed to close in, mirroring the heaviness in his heart. For the next few days, Chance avoided Victor, wrestling with his guilt and uncertainty. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ian's lifeless body and Victor's calm, purposeful actions. His nights were restless, his dreams haunted by questions he couldn't answer. One evening, Abby noticed his distraction and gently pressed him. "Chance, what's going on? You've been so distant lately." He hesitated, torn between his love for Abby and the storm raging inside him. "It's work," he said finally. "There's a lot happening right now." Abby frowned but didn't push further. She trusted him, and that trust only made Chance's burden heavier. The unspoken truth: a week after Ian's death, Chance found himself face to face with Victor at Crimson Lights. The older man greeted him with a small nod, his gaze sharp and knowing. There was no fear, no guilt, only the quiet confidence of a man who had survived countless battles. "Chance," Victor said, his voice low and steady. "I trust everything is under control." Chance's jaw tightened. He wanted to say so many things, to demand answers, to call Victor out for what he had done. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's handled." Victor's eyes lingered on Chance for a moment, as if assessing him. Then he gave a slight smile. "Good. Keep it that way." As Victor walked away, Chance felt a surge of anger and shame. He had let Victor win, not just the battle with Ian, but the war within Chance's own soul. He had chosen silence over action, pragmatism over principle. And now, he had to live with that choice. The weight of silence. Chance's decision to stay silent didn't come without consequences. Though Ian Ward's death brought a sense of relief to Genoa City, it left a mark on Chance that he couldn't shake. Every time he looked at his badge, he felt its weight. Every time he saw Victor, he felt the unspoken tension between them, a silent acknowledgement of what had happened that night. Victor, for his part, moved on as though nothing had changed. To him, Ian's death was a necessary evil, a means to an end. But for Chance, it was a reminder of the line he had crossed, a line he couldn't uncross. In the end, the question lingered in Chance's mind: was justice served, or was it sacrificed? He didn't know if he'd ever find the answer. All he knew was that his world had changed, and he could never look at himself, or Victor Newman, the same way again.